Tim Cook just stepped down from Apple. After 15 years at the helm of the most valuable company on earth, the man who turned hardware into a services empire and pushed Apple past $3 trillion in market value is handing the keys to someone most Americans have never heard of. That is not a soft transition. That is the end of an era. There are 4 more stories you need today. Virginia voters just stripped Republicans of what they thought was a safe buffer in the House. Trump's second term lost another cabinet member this week under circumstances the White House is still trying to explain. The FBI director filed a $250 million lawsuit against one of America's most respected magazines, and House Republicans just built the largest midterm war chest in party history, which sounds impressive until you see what Virginia just did to their seat math. Stay until the end, because the Virginia story is the one that changes how every political strategist in Washington is going to spend the next 6 months. If you want independent analysis that goes past the headline, please hit like and subscribe right now. The algorithm pushes this channel based on first-hour engagement, and you are watching in that window. If you can spare a super thanks or a channel sponsorship, it funds research time, keeps this free of any advertiser agenda. Let us start with Apple, because this is bigger than a management reshuffle. It is a stress test of the most successful corporate franchise in American history. Tim Cook became CEO in 2011. At the time, Apple was worth roughly $350 billion. When he steps aside to become executive chairman, the company is worth more than $3 trillion. That is nearly a tenfold increase. Cook did not just manage Apple, he expanded it into financial services, health tech, streaming, and enterprise software while keeping the iPhone the most reliable cash machine in consumer electronics. He built the services business from almost nothing into a division that now generates over $100 billion a year. He navigated a global pandemic, 2 major geopolitical crises, and a fundamental restructuring of the chip supply chain. The incoming CEO is John Ternus. He is Apple's current head of hardware engineering. He oversaw the development of the M-series chips that fundamentally changed the performance economics of personal computing. Investors and analysts had been watching him for months as the most likely succession candidate. His confirmation answers that question, but it opens several others. Ternus has never run a public company. He has never managed Apple's sprawling services division, which now generates more revenue than the entire Mac business. He has never navigated a regulatory environment where Apple faces antitrust scrutiny in the United States, Europe, Japan, and South Korea simultaneously. He inherits a company in the middle of the most complex geopolitical decade it has faced, with deep supply chain exposure to China and a customer base in over 170 countries. Markets will react. Institutional investors who built positions around Tim Cook's particular risk profile and capital allocation philosophy now have to recalibrate. Apple's stock price will be the first signal of whether Wall Street believes Ternus is ready for this. The deeper question is whether Apple, the consumer brand, the cultural brand, the company that has been synonymous with Steve Jobs and Tim Cook for 25 years, can maintain that same magnetic identity under a CEO the world has not yet had a chance to trust. Cook built something that outlasted his predecessor. The question now is whether the institution outlasts Cook. That transition is worth watching very closely. If you are watching right now, I want to hear from you in the comments. Where are you watching from? And what does Tim Cook's exit mean to you, as an investor, as a user, as someone following the American economy? Tell me one thing. The first-hour engagement is what determines whether YouTube pushes this video to more people. One comment makes a real difference, and share this with someone who still thinks Apple's era is on automatic. Now to Washington, and a story that was not supposed to become a constitutional moment. The Trump administration filed legal arguments this week challenging the Presidential Records Act, a nearly 50-year-old law that requires all presidential communications to be preserved and eventually made available to the public and historians. The administration's position is that the law is unconstitutional. If that argument succeeds in court, it would give the sitting president the ability to destroy or conceal official communications with no legal consequence and no public access. Historians immediately flagged the implications. Legal scholars from both parties described it as an unprecedented assertion of executive power over accountability. The case is moving through the courts, and if it reaches the Supreme Court, it could fundamentally redefine how much transparency American democracy can actually demand from its president. This is not a procedural argument. It is a structural one, and it is being made at a moment when the administration is already shedding personnel at an unusual rate. The context matters. Labor Secretary Lori Chavez de Remer resigned this week while under review for possible misconduct. The departure adds to a growing list of cabinet exits in the second term. There have been more high-profile departures in the first months of this term than in the entire first 2 years of the first one. The pattern is either a sign of vigorous personnel management or a sign of something harder to stabilize. FBI Director Kash Patel filed a $250 million defamation lawsuit against The Atlantic magazine this week over an article that accused him of excessive drinking, regular absences from FBI headquarters, and using his position against personal and political opponents. The magazine says it is fully confident in its reporting and will defend its journalists. Patel's legal team acknowledges he was briefly locked out of the FBI's internal computer system on April 10th, attributing it to a technical glitch and denying he panicked. The lawsuit claims the article was based on anonymous sources with personal motives. Whatever the facts, the lawsuit adds to a pattern of friction between the current FBI leadership and the institutions that normally cover it. A sitting FBI director suing a major national magazine is not a routine event. It is a confrontation between the law enforcement apparatus of the federal government and the press that is supposed to hold it accountable. That is worth naming clearly. House Republicans announced this week that their campaign committee raised a record $47.1 million in the first quarter of the 2026 midterm cycle. The total is the highest comparable fundraising figure in the party's history for that window. Party officials called it a sign of confidence and enthusiasm. Then Virginia's results came in. Virginia voters delivered a significant set of wins to Democrats, positioning the party to pick up 4 additional United States House seats from the current cycle. Hakeem Jeffries, the House Democratic leader, had campaigned aggressively in Virginia around a redistricting referendum, explicitly framing it as a mechanism to cost Trump control of Congress. The 4 seats would not flip the entire chamber on their own, but they tightened the margin to the point where Republican leadership would have essentially no room for internal dissent on any major legislation. The Virginia result, combined with historical patterns for out-of-power parties in midterm elections, is exactly the kind of data point that forces Republican strategists to revise their assumptions about what $47 million can actually protect. The money is real. The enthusiasm is real, and so is the backlash. If you stayed through to the end, I genuinely appreciate it. The Tim Cook exit and the Virginia results are both going to have consequences that unfold over months, not days. Following them from here, before the narrative gets crowded, is exactly what this channel is built for. Hit like and subscribe if this was worth your time. Subscribe because I am tracking both the Apple succession and the 2026 seat math as they develop. The Super Thanks feature, if you can spare it, goes directly into research hours. No advertiser sits in the room when I decide what to cover. A channel sponsorship means the same thing: full editorial independence. No party affiliation, no financial backer with an agenda. Tell me in the comments which story mattered most to you today and where you are watching from. I read every comment in the first 48 hours. Take care of yourself. See you in the next one.